So our first speaker is Ewart de Munter. He works for here about 10 years, and he's one of the most trained nurses of our endoscopy. So he will tell us something about what you need wearing your endoscopic unit for the endoscopic procedures, simple ones and more complex.
Hello, my name is Ewart de Munter. I'm one of the nurses here, and I will talk about a setup in the endoscopy room. I think everybody will agree when I say when you start your program well prepared, you might have a pleasant day, but when you start your program unprepared, it could be an easy start, but you might shoot yourself in the foot. So let's say preparation is the key. You have a lot of advantages, so it's time saving. You don't have to run in, run out the room all the time. It increases your procedure quality when you can work in the best possible conditions, and it will decrease your stress level because, as you know, when you have, for example, a bleeding and your nurses still have to look for a clip somewhere, it will give you a lot of stress. And I can guarantee you, your nurse will have as much stress than you have. So I think time saving isn't a bad thing in that kind of situations. Now let's talk about the setup in therapeutic endoscopy. A therapeutic program in UZ Kent means we have some EMRs, ESDs, POEMs, RFA, all mixed together. So preparing the work field is a little bit different. So we use for tissue injection now gelofusine, with adrenaline and some blue in it, because the gelofusine is a little bit more viscous than just saline, so it lasts longer in the tissues. We prepare some chromo medication like acetic acid for Barrett's. We prepare some brushes and alcohol because to clean the lens and the knives, because we see when we are doing, like for example, an ESD, after a while of the burning, the knife get a bit dirty, and also the lens get a bit black, so we try to clean it often. The silicone as well, and try to label all your solutions and syringes, because it's dangerous. You can start to make some mistakes otherwise. The room setup is pretty much the same, but on the left picture you see we have there the the tissue injection pump of Olympus, and there we use again the saline because the gelofusine is too thick for the knives for tissue injection. To prepare your procedure, to start with, at least you need a well-trained nurse. This trained nurse will for sure check the procedure if the procedure is available. And I think it's always and also very important to discuss as a nurse with your endoscopist procedure step by step. Because generally speaking, we could say that the doctor will always go out from the best case scenario, while the nurse will always take the worst case scenario in mind. So to give a little example, when the endoscopists say, okay, yeah, we have a pancreatic kyst, we're just going to place a little stent. We're going to use the EUS scope, Hotaxios 10-15 stent. It will take like 10 minutes done. The experienced nurse will hear, and I think I can say I'm an experienced nurse after 10 years. So I will hear, okay, nice, fine, but maybe the stent can be misplaced. For then, I need a gastroscope, a foreign body forceps to remove it. Maybe we have to close the defect, so I will take some clips. I might need some adrenaline for bleeding. We probably will place a new stent. We need double pigtails for that. For that, we need a therapeutic gastroscope, and it will take at least 1 or 2 hours. So it's just an example. It's not like we misplace stents all the time, but I will just say when you discuss your procedure with the doctor and nurse together, you can avoid this kind of surprises. You still have to select your correct ERBI program. So most of them are preset by the company, but the endoscopist can still modify the program during the procedure, depending on how it goes. The most of you will probably know you can switch easily from an A to B program on the Vaio from Urbi with the black pedal. When you don't know it, it's very useful. You can easily go from one to another program. So most of the time we use for program B the soft coagulation. So when we have a bleeding, we can easily go to the soft coagulation just to tap the black pedal. To end my presentation with the setup in ERCP. So the nurse will prepare some syringes of contrast and prepare some wet tissues, because everybody who's performing ERCP will already notice after a while it gets all a little bit difficult. The wires get stuck, it not goes very fluid. That's because of the wires became a bit sticky because of the contrast. So to avoid that, we try to clean the wires very often with wet tissues. Try to position your fluoroscopy without giving X-rays. You can just use the light for that. Install your Urbi on sphincterotomy. Don't change it from polypectomy. And try to have always a gastroscope available in the room, because when there is an obstruction, you cannot pass, for example, the pylorus. It's always good to have a front view gastroscope so you can switch easily over there. Minimize radiation dosing. To avoid scatter radiation, I think it's important to place some protection shields, and always, of course, wear some lead gown, a neck protector, and even lead glasses. Since a couple of months, we have our own RX room on our department, and we see many advantages. So we have now everything nearby. We have the scopes, our endoscopic tools, and even the colics are nearby. We have the room always available. We don't have to share it anymore with other departments. So it's very easy to organize our program.
Urbi is the daughter company of Urbi Germany in Tübingen. On the agenda today from me, I will talk about the physical entities of the current, how is current working, what it does. I will go a little bit more in depth on endocut, I and Q, and a little bit more in depth on submucosal dissection, the possible signals you can use during more complex indications like ESD, POEM, etc. We start with coagulation. What is coagulation? Coagulation is shrinking of the tissue caused by or due to desiccation and denaturation of the tissue. So it's the same principle as you put a piece of meat or an egg in a hot pan. The tissue shrinks together, and this gives coagulation, and by coagulation is a sort of hemostasis. Cutting. Now, to do a good polypectomy, we advise not to squeeze the polyp, but just have a gentle contact with the polyp. How less contact there is with the polyp and the snare, how gently the contact is, how less current density, the higher the current intensity, the better the cut. A sharp cut make the polypectomy better. If you have a lot of contact, there's a low current density, and the cut will become later, or will be delayed, or will be more difficult. Also, it will be generating heat. If you close then the snare, when it's generating heat without a real cut, you risk of ripping up the polyp. So the right position is to gently put the snare around the polyp. Then you press the yellow pedal. Maybe you can start with a big polyp with pre-coagulation with the blue pedal, but when you start your endocut or the dissection of the polyp, you will push the yellow pedal. You will keep your feet on the yellow pedal till the total polypectomy has been done.
I heard we usually use soft coagulation for that. I heard before that soft coagulation goes, the currents goes deeper in the tissue. So what's the biggest risk for perforation, to use soft or forced coagulation?
That's a good question, Ewout. It's also a difficult question. Forced coagulation will go faster. It will be more superficial, of course. It will not go in the depth of the tissue. Soft coagulation, I compare it a little bit with forced coagulation, is putting a piece of meat in a hot pan. You see immediately the effect. It will carbonize or close the tissue. With soft coagulation, is put a piece of meat in a warm pan, not a hot pan, and the heat go more inside of the tissue. So after EMR procedure, there is sometimes advice, or the advice it's to do the edges with soft coagulation, to burn or to coagulate the rest tissue. But for fast coagulation, maybe more safe coagulation after a polypectomy, that the heat is not going too deep in the tissue, maybe it's better to advise forced coagulation.